Okay, time for convening having arrived. The Senate will come to order. Would ask unauthorized visitors to exit the chamber at this time. The Senate will come to order. Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 53rd.
Good morning, Mr. President. It's going to be a cold day this afternoon. You better find your snuggling buddy. Or let me rephrase that. You need to keep warm today. It's also the birthday of our majority whip today. We need to congratulate him for being an old man like the rest of us. I don't think he's on the floor. Anyway, Mr. President, the journal's been read and found to be correct.
Thank you, Senator, for your good work. So on the journal, is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to confirmation of the journal? Chair is none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators having bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring to the Secretary's desk at this time. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 168 by Senator Jones of the 25th and others, a bill to be entitled
Higher Education.
Senate Bill 169 by Senator Gooch of the 51st. Senate Bill 170 by Senator Beach of the 21st, a bill to be entitled
Transportation.
Senate Resolution 356 by Senator McCune of the 29th.
Appropriations.
Senate Resolution 360 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others, a resolution creating the Senate Data Security and Privacy.
Science, Technology, and Industry.
Mr. President, that completes the order.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions.
House Bill 63 by Representative Tanner of the 9th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter
Finance.
7. House Bill 73 by Representative Turner of the 21st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend.
Slogo General.
House Bill 199 by Representative Corbett of the 174th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1A.
Natural Resources.
House Bill 206 by Representative Harrell of the 106th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to
Public
amend.
Safety.
House Bill 217 by Representative Maxwell of the 17th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section.
Retirement.
House Bill 246 by Representative Knight of the 130th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to
Regulated Industries.
House Bill 256 by Representative Maxwell of the 17th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend.
Retirement.
House Bill 266 by Representative Battles of the 15th.
Retirement.
Mr. President, that completes the order.
Secretary will read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Banking and Financial Institutions has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that Senate Bill 104 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Jones of the 25th Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Science and Technology Committee has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report back the same to the Senate with the following recommendation: that Senate Bill 89 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Beach of the 21st Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Environment has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report back the same to the Senate with the following recommendation: that Senate Bill 101 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Tolleson of the 20th Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report back the same to the Senate with the following recommendation: that Senate Bill 69 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Hill of the 6th Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report back the same to the Senate with the following recommendation: that Senate Bill 85 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Ginn of the 47th Chairman. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Secretary will read bills for the second time.
Senate Bill 64 by Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd and others, Juvenile Code, Domestic Relations and Vital Records, repeal voluntary acknowledgments of legitimation. Senate Bill 94 by Senator Bethel of the 54th and others, Criminal Procedure, require procedure for enhancing witness identification accuracy. Senate Bill 108 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others, Insurance, provide the requirements for maintaining a risk management framework. Senate Bill 125 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others, State Road and Tollway Authority authorized the collection of tolls for the management of traffic flow. Senate Bill 139 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others, selling and other trade practices, provide regulation auxiliary containers shall be done by general law. Senate Resolution 155 by Senator Hill of the 32nd and others, U.S. Congress encouraged to adopt and submit the states a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution and balance our current budget. Senate Resolution 282 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others, Joint Peace Officer and Firefighter Occupational Disease Study Committee create. Mr. President, this completes the order.
All right, it is time now for the morning, time for the morning roll call. Time for the morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes Senator from the 7th.
Mr. President, I'd like unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 6th for business outside the Capitol.
6, without objection, Senator from the 6th will be excused. Chair recognizes distinguished Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 25th for
25th, without objection, Senator from the 25th will be excused. Chair recognizes distinguished Rules Chairman, Senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask to excuse the senator from the 17th for business outside the Capitol.
Chair recognizes 17th, without objection, Senator from the 17th will be excused. Chair recognizes Senator from the 15th.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to unanimously move to excuse the senator from the 5th for business outside the Capitol.
5th, without objection, Senator from the 5th will be excused. Chair recognizes Senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 8th for business in the Capitol.
8th, without objection, Senator from the 8th will be excused. Chair recognizes Senator from the 54th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 52nd for business outside the chamber.
52nd, without objection, Senator from the 52nd will be excused. Are there any other motions? Before we get started, just on a couple of quick announcements. We would like, obviously, we got work to be done. Everybody is attuned to the weather and what we might be facing pertaining to that. What I would suggest is, I know that many of the committees have been canceled. Some have some quick items in which they need to get done. We'd like to try to wrap the day up by 2, and certainly no later than 3 o'clock today. The hopper will stay open with the Secretary of the Senate today until 2 o'clock. The hopper will be closed at 2. So if you want to drop a bill today, make sure you get it to the Secretary of the Senate's office by 2 o'clock on that. So we want to try to get everybody the business done and then moved on in a timely manner before the weather comes in. And I am assisted today by my good friend Max up here, the son of the senator from the 14th. Thank goodness he looks like his mama. And Max is 9 years old, probably getting out because of snow day. And have you been in school any this week? Yes, you have? Okay, good, good. Has your daddy taught you anything today or this week? Yes. He has? Good. All right, just wanted to make sure. He sure hadn't done anything of worth or value down here, I can tell you that. So I'm kidding. All right. The secretary, can you read that right there? Can you see that? I want you to say the secretary will unlock the machine. The secretary will unlock when I point to you. All right, the secretary will call the roll. Senators, signify your presence by voting the yay switch.
The secretary will unlock the machine.
All right, there you go. Very good, Mike. Good job. He's got a future. I would like to today allow the Senate to join me in wishing the senator from the 29th, the senator from the 51st, a very happy birthday today. All right. I told the senator from the 51st that he and the senator from the 29th are two peas in a pod, so I'm glad that they share a birthday together. It is now time for our chaplain of the day, our morning devotion, and it is, I'd like to ask all senators, please take your seats and cease conversation at this time. It is indeed a great honor to bring back Dr. Benny Tate. Many of you have obviously gotten to know him. He has been a frequent chaplain of the day for us. He's a senior pastor at Rock Springs Church there in Milner, Georgia, and does a wonderful job. I've been to his church and visited with his congregation on numerous occasions, and nobody does it quite like Benny Tate. He first came, originally he's from Tennessee. We're not going to hold that against him, and he still cheers for the Volunteers, but he came here 25 years ago, and the church was about 60 in membership. Today it is well over 6,000 in membership, and he has done a remarkable job, not only in terms of the ministry and changing lives in so many different ways. He has a medical clinic. He has a Potter House ministry that really helps women that are battling drugs and alcohol addiction. He also has the Children's Academy, private Christian school through the 12th grade, has an Impact Street ministry as well, and just does a remarkable job. He is an author of 4 books as well, and a wonderful speaker. He's currently the president of the Congregational Methodist denomination, and a wonderful, wonderful individual and a dear personal friend. Please welcome Dr. Benny Tate.
Thank you. Good morning. Well, it's a great day, right? It's a great day, and I understand a couple of the senators have birthdays, and that would make it a great day, but I've reached the conclusion every day is a great day. I remember getting up one morning, my wife saying to me, Benny, do you know what today is? And I began to think, what is today? And I went on to work and called a local florist, and I began to think, is today my wife's birthday? Is today our anniversary? What is today? I couldn't find. So I had the florist send Barbara some flowers. And there's a little boutique in Griffin, Georgia, where we do most of our shopping. I think the name of it's Walmart. I went by there and picked her up a nice dress and took it to her and said, we're going out for dinner tonight. No need to heat up the kitchen, as if the microwave would do that. But anyway, we went out, had a nice dinner and a nice meal, came home, got ready to retire for the night. And I said, Barbara, it's been a great day, hadn't it? She said, it's been a great day. I said, you know, Barbara, I didn't forget, did I? She said, no, Benny, you didn't forget. She said, you know, Benny, I think it's been the greatest Groundhog's Day I've ever experienced. Well, today's a good day. I want to share just a few scriptures with you, and I know you've got a lot to do and a little time to do it. But in Matthew chapter 11, verse 11, Jesus did this. Jesus looked out over a group much like this, and he pointed to one, and he said, there's not a greater among you than John the Baptist. He looked out over a group, and he said, there's not a greater than John the Baptist. Now, we live in a day which we talk about great. He's the greatest basketball player. He's the greatest golfer. He's the greatest politician. He's the greatest preacher. A few weeks ago, I preached on Sunday and thought I did a pretty good job. And I said to my wife, honey, how many really great preachers do you think there are in America? She said, one less than you do. But Jesus said there's not a greater than John. And I began to think about what made John greater than the others. I want to give you just a few quick things. First of all, John was a man of prayer. The disciples said to Jesus in Luke 11:1, teach us to pray like John taught his disciples to pray. John was a man of prayer. I want to say I appreciate your service. Nobody's serving in the Georgia Senate because they're getting rich. I appreciate your service and what you do for our state. But you know what I know? We need wisdom from somebody other than ourselves. Abraham Lincoln, we can probably all agree, was a great president. But Abraham Lincoln said, I've been driven to my knees by an overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go. My wisdom and all about me seemed insufficient for the day. What made John a great man was he was a man of prayer. But I'll tell you something else that made him a great man. He was a man of humility. Do you realize the one who Jesus said is the greatest said, I'm not even worthy to take his sandals off. The one who Jesus said was the greatest man said, Jesus must increase, but I must decrease. The great boxer Muhammad Ali was on an airplane flight one time. And the stewardess said, Mr. Ali, put your seatbelt on. Mr. Ali said, Superman don't need a seatbelt. She responded by saying, Superman don't need an airplane. Put your seatbelt on. Winston Churchill, it was said, ask of him, Mr. Churchill, how does it make you feel when facilities fill up to hear you speak? And Winston Churchill said, it doesn't make me feel good because double as many would show up if they were hanging me. I'm saying a person that pleases God is a person of humility. I think Woodrow Wilson had it best. He said every politician that's elected, their head either swells or grows. And it's so important that our heads grow instead of swell. Jesus said there's not a greater than John. And John was a man of prayer. And John was a man of humility. And John was a man of conviction. Do you realize it was John the Baptist who looked at Herod and said, Herod, let me tell you something. It's not lawful for you to have your brother's wife. He was a man of conviction. See, when you please God, it doesn't matter who you don't please. But if you don't please God, it doesn't matter who you do please. I heard about a politician in South Alabama, and they asked him, they said, are you concerned about how quickly public opinion can change? He said, oh no, it can't change any faster than I can. William Penn said, right is right, no matter who is against it. And wrong is wrong, no matter who is for it. I read a story one time about a couple. They were living together, but they weren't married. And the man's name was Tom, and he said to his mother, he said, we're just friends. But you know, mamas have a way of knowing. Amen? And mama just saw something that wasn't right. She came over for dinner and she just saw something that wasn't right. And after mama went home, Tom sent an email to his mother and said, Mother, Jane has said since you had dinner with us that she can't find our silver tray. Now, Mom, we're not saying you took the silver tray. We're not saying you didn't take the silver tray. But we're just saying since you came to have dinner with us, Jane can't find the silver tray. She sent him an email back. She said, Tom, I'm not saying you're sleeping with Jane. But I'm not saying you're not sleeping with Jane. But if Jane was sleeping in her own bed, she would have found her silver tray by now. This is what I know. Jesus looked out and said, there's not a greater than John. And John was a man of prayer or a woman of prayer. And John was a man of humility. There's people you'd like to buy them for what they're worth and sell them for what they think they're worth. Somebody said, amen, bless him. Don't start that. I'll preach all day. He was a man of conviction. He realized if you please God, it doesn't matter who you don't please. And if you don't please God, it doesn't matter who you do please. Because ultimately, Daniel Webster said the greatest concept that's ever hit my mind is one day I'm going to stand before God. Then the last thing, in closing, a little girl years ago stayed all night with my daughter and went to church with us. And I said, in closing, and that little girl said, when your daddy says that, what does that mean? She said, absolutely nothing. The last thing I noticed about John, he was a person of emulation. Do you realize this? And I do close. When Jesus came on the scene, somebody asked Herod, said, who is this guy Jesus? And Herod said, that's John the Baptist that's risen from the dead. John must have been an awful lot like Jesus. And again, men and precious ladies, I leave you with, Jesus said, there's not a greater among you than John the Baptist. Let's pray. Lord, as I bow my head and my heart in your presence, I thank you for this day. I thank you for Brother Casey. I thank you for this body. I, in a lot of ways, feel like I am a pastor. I've been so many times, I feel like I am a pastor to these precious people. And I just pray your blessings. I thank you, God. They're out here today sacrificing. It's a wintry day, and they've driven in and driving back. And I pray you just keep them safe and watch over their families, and thank you for their service. I ask you, God, to give them wisdom. I appreciate all they do for our wonderful, wonderful state. Now, God, would you bless us and keep us? Make your face to shine upon us, be gracious unto us. Lift your countenance upon us, and may we experience your peace. And I pray this prayer respecting all faiths, but I pray this prayer in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Until you come, we pray. Amen.
Join me as we honor our country with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the country, to the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation.
Casey, love you.
That's the reason why. Bruce Thompson and I started playing with each other. He started calling me girlfriend as a tournament cheerleader.
Well, actually, he asked one of my guys.
It wasn't like it wasn't bad. It was like in terms of endearment, positive. And then when I thought I started saying, he looked at me like,
Yes, sir.
Judson, good to see you. No, I appreciate it. God bless you. Good to see you.
How you feeling? We'd like to present the Doctor of the Day, and to do so, I call upon the distinguished senator from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited about having one of my own doctors here, a man that I've known a good while, known of longer than that. He's Dr. Wendell Duncan. He received his Bachelor of Science degree from Mercer University and earned his medical degree from the Medical College of Georgia. He completed his internship and residency at the Greenville Hospital System in Greenville, South Carolina. He also completed his hand surgery, that's what he does, I think, fellowship at the Heart Center in Charleston, South Carolina, the Hand Center in Charleston, South Carolina. Dr. Duncan has been a practicing orthopedic surgeon since 1986 and has been a hand surgeon with the Augusta Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Specialist since 1968. He served as the Georgia Orthopedic Society's representative to the Medical Association of Georgia and serves as president of the Georgia Orthopedic Society. Additionally, he served as past president of the Georgia Society of Surgery of the Hand. Dr. Duncan has been married to Jan for 35 years, and they have 2 children, 2 sweet daughter-in-laws and 3 grandchildren. He is a deacon and Sunday school teacher at the Warren Baptist Church, which I'm very familiar with in Augusta, Georgia. Dr. Duncan worked on me one time, and he said it wasn't any use, Bill, that I better just wear it out. It's a wrist that I had worn out shaking hands politically all across the state of Georgia for decades, and it was just been worn out. And he said I'd better just stay with it, and he wouldn't mess with it. But it's my great pleasure to introduce a good man, a good doctor, and a man that if you got any bone problems, you can go downstairs after a while. Dr. Duncan.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished senators. I just want to say how much I appreciate being here. It's really, truly an honor. I'm a local guy, grew up around Atlanta and Doraville, and it's nice to be in the chambers rather than just driving around outside. But I do appreciate your service, appreciate what you all do for the physicians of Georgia and the patients of Georgia. Appreciate you keeping this a great state for health care, and we just thank you. Appreciate it.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so
President.
much. Good. Appreciate it. Let's do a picture. You ready? Have a special group to recognize, and the Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 164 by Senator Wilkinson of the 50th and others, a resolution commending the Georgia Young Farmers Association and recognizing February 25th, 2015 as Young Farmers Day at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas the Georgia Young Farmers Association was founded in 1970 to serve as the primary adult education delivery system of the young Georgia farmers, and whereas members of the Georgia Young Farmers Association render valuable service to their local communities through classes, field demonstrations, school tours, and a wide array of additional educational activities. And whereas the Georgia Young Farmers Association's public relations campaign, Got Food, Thank a Farmer, is being heralded as one of the premier outreach initiatives in Georgia agricultural history. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the Georgia Young Farmers Association for its contribution to the welfare of this state and the nation through its important work educating future farmers, and recognize February 25th, 2015 as Young Farmers Day at the state capitol. Mr. President, this completes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chairs none. The resolution is adopted. It's always great to have our Young Farmer Association present with us and to speak to the resolution and recognize our special platform guest. I call upon the distinguished Agriculture Committee Chairman, the Senator from the 50th.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, it is my pleasure to recognize the young farmers on their day at the Capitol. Here I'd like to introduce our officers that we have up here with the Executive Secretary of the organization, John Allen Bailey, Josh Gardner, the Treasurer from Appling County, Stan Deal and Greg Mims from Seminole County, and Derek Wooten from Jeff Davis County. Now, I'm not going to take a lot of time with this. I'm going to present the resolution to the President, the current President of the Georgia Young Farmer Association, the Honorable Senator from the 7th District.
Well, I will be brief and short. No, to the Senator from the 50th, we appreciate the recognition and we appreciate the support the General Assembly has given to the Young Farmer Association. And because you get to hear me speak quite a bit, I'm going to designate the President-elect Derek Wooten from Jeff Davis County to bring some remarks on behalf of the Georgia Young Farmers Association. But we do sincerely appreciate the support that the General Assembly gives. Thank you much. Derek?
Thank y'all for having us today. I don't know if y'all know this, but Tyler was mistaken as a page this morning. I know y'all always pick on his size, so. But we thank y'all for having us this morning, and we thank y'all for all y'all do for our organization and for agriculture around the state. Y'all just keep up the good work. Thank y'all.
Good deal. Thank you. All right. Appreciate it. Let's do a picture down here together. We have another special group we'd like to recognize, and the Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 162 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd and others, a resolution honoring the United States Youth Fly Fishing Team and for other purposes. Whereas the United States Youth Fly Fishing Team proudly represented the United States and won first place in the 13th FIPS Moosh Youth World Fly Fishing Championships. And whereas 4 of the 6 team members hail from our great state of Georgia and all equally contributed to the team's success. Whereas Gabriel Widoshk from Atlanta, Georgia won the individual gold, leading the team to first place victory. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the extraordinary accomplishments of these distinguished Georgians be appropriately recognized. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the United States Youth Fly Fishing Team, especially the 4 young men from Georgia, on their championship display of fly fishing. Mr. President, this completes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. To speak to the resolution and recognize these wonderful competitors in fly fishing, I call upon the distinguished senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, as we get older, and a lot of us are there, we dream of those days we're in a beautiful stream on a mountainous area fly fishing. And that's for us old men. But we have some young men, young people, who are honored today, and they're the United States Youth Fly Fishing Team, proudly representing the United States of America, and they won first place in the World Championship in Poland. Let's give them a hand. There are 16 members, and 4 of them are from Georgia. And I'd like to introduce them. Gabriel Widoshk from Atlanta, Hunter Hoffland from Moreland, Georgia, Andrew Brown from Alpharetta, Georgia, and my constituent Mason Sims from Chickamauga, Georgia. I'd like to call upon Hunter Hoffler to talk to the resolution.
Hey, well, thank you guys very much for having us today. It's a great privilege to be up here. I know the team was really excited to come here and get to see how all this works and get to see the building. I know a lot of us had not been here before, and it's just definitely a great honor to be up here, and the team is proud to represent the United States. And you know, a lot of us are from Georgia, and a lot of our traveling team that does go to Europe is from Georgia. And we definitely enjoy the state and all it has to offer, and wanted to thank everybody here for making that happen for us.
Okay, picture time.
Picture together, guys. Good job. Good job. Are there any unanimous consents? Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes senator from the 18th. Please give the distinguished senator from Macon your attention.
Good morning, senators, and thank you, Mr. President. I rise today for a point of personal privilege and a little bit of pride to draw attention in the Senate to a remarkable individual with his ties to my home area of Reverend Henry McNeil Turner. Born this month in 1834, Reverend Turner holds a special place in the history of Georgia Republican Party for having acted as one of its founders during the Reconstruction era. Born a free man in rural South Carolina, he overcame racial prejudices to earn an education, impressing tutors with the power of his intellect. Reverend Turner traveled the South, spreading his faith while expanding his own education in Hebrew and the classics. But when war came to the South, the Reverend could not stand by idly, and he organized one of the first regiments of black troops serving as its chaplain. After the war, he was appointed by President Andrew Johnson to work with the Freedmen's Bureau during Reconstruction, and he was elected by the people of Macon to the Georgia legislature in 1868. Against great opposition, he would go on to advocate for the freedom and independence of African Americans for the rest of his life. Today, his portrait hangs in this building outside the door to the House chamber as a tribute to that cause of his unyielding commitment. Thank you for joining me in remembering and saluting him here today and in looking to his legacy of service to inspire us as we strive to do our best for the people of Georgia. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator on the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to discuss a new development on the religious freedom legislation. It's kind of like the old game whack-a-mole. Each time you knock one of these arguments down, they come up with something even more ridiculous. And yesterday, I really think maybe we have finally hit bottom. Because yesterday what the paid lobbyist for some of the opponents had to say about this bill is that it was going to somehow empower the Ku Klux Klan and reverse Georgia's anti-mask act. And I want to respond to this because of all the things that have been said about this bill, that it's a license to discriminate, that we're somehow empowering child abusers, to suggest that we would make common cause with hate-filled, racist groups is perhaps the most offensive allegation that's been made. I remember growing up in Columbus and my father driving me past what used to be a department store. And he told me about growing up in a city where there were separate water fountains depending on the color of your skin. He told me about growing up in a society where people were considered less than a person because of the color of their skin. And I grew up understanding that every person is entitled to dignity and respect and equal treatment under the law. That's why I went to law school. It's why I swore an oath before I came into this body as an attorney to represent people and demand equal treatment under the law. But let's talk about the allegation. Mr. Bowers represented the state in a case involving the constitutionality of the Anti-Mask Act. And as a wise lawyer once told me, if somebody's making claims citing a case, you ought to go read the case. So I've got the opinion here in front of me. We've talked a lot about what is a compelling state interest here in Georgia. This is an opinion of the Georgia Supreme Court. And they said the state's interest furthered by the Anti-Mask Act lie at the very heart of the realm of legitimate governmental activity. Safeguarding the right of the people to exercise their civil rights and to be free from violence and intimidation is not only a compelling interest, it is the General Assembly's affirmative constitutional duty. I think that should clear up this entire debate. So I do appreciate Mr. Bowers drawing this case to my attention. The court went on to say something else that's pretty relevant about this debate. They said fear is one of the things that makes people run the other way, puts people in a position so they won't register to vote, they won't take part in political activities. I would submit to you that the legal campaign being waged in courts against people of faith is to do exactly that, is to make them afraid of participating in our process. And I'll just close with this. There was a case in Canada where there were far left activists saying that you couldn't operate a law school at a religious affiliated university. And this actually went all the way up to a Canadian appellate court. And the appellate court, in affirming that private religious institution's right to have a law school, said this: for many people in a secular society, religious freedom is worse than inconsequential. It actually gets in the way. It's the dead hand of the superstitious past, reaching out to restrain more important secular values like equality from becoming real equality. A more progressive society on that view would not permit any incursions by religion into public life, or would at least limit those incursions to those by religions that have belief systems and practices that are more consonant with mainstream morality. The discomforting truth is that religions with views that many Canadians find incomprehensible or offensive abound in a liberal and multicultural society. The law protects them and must carve out a place where they can not only exist, but flourish. That's the debate we're having about Senate Bill 129. Is Georgia going to remain a place where we carve out an area in the law where people of faith can not only exist, but flourish? Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 55th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I rise today on a point of personal privilege to bring you a Black History moment. My Black History moment is on Gordon Parks. He was born November 30th, 1912. He was an American photographer, musician, writer, and film director. He is best remembered for his photographic essay for Life magazine and as the director of the 1971 film Shaft. Parks was born in Fort Scott, Kansas, the son of Sarah and Jackson Parks. He was the last child born to them. His father was a farmer who grew corn, beets, turnips, potatoes, collard greens, and tomatoes. They also had a few ducks, chickens, and hogs. He attended a segregated elementary school. The town was too small to afford a separate high school that would facilitate segregation of the secondary school, but blacks were not allowed to play sports or attend school social activities, and they were discouraged from developing any aspiration for higher education. Parks related in a documentary on his life that his teacher told him that his desire to go to college would be a waste of money. When Parks was 11 years old, 3 white boys threw him into the Marmaton River. Knowing he couldn't swim, he had the presence of mind to duck underwater so they wouldn't see him make it to land. His mother died when he was 14. He spent his last night at the family home, sleeping beside his mother's coffin, seeking not only solace, but a way to face his own fear of death. Soon after, he was sent to live with relatives. That situation ended with Parks being turned out into the streets to fend for himself. In 1929, he briefly worked in a gentleman's club, the Minnesota Club. There he not only observed the trappings of success, but was able to read many books from the club library. When the Wall Street crash of 1929 brought an end to the club, he jumped a train to Chicago, where he managed to land a job in a flop house. At the age of 25, Parks was struck by photographs of migrant workers in a magazine and bought his first camera, a Voigtlander Brilliant, for $12.50 at a Seattle, Washington pawn shop. The photography clerks who developed Parks' first roll of film applauded his work and prompted him to seek a fashion assignment at a women's clothing store in St. Paul, Minnesota, that was owned by Frank Murphy. Those photographs caught the eye of Marva Lewis, the elegant wife of heavyweight boxing champion Joe Louis. She encouraged Parks to move to Chicago in 1940, where he began a portrait business and specialized in photographs of society women. Over the next few years, Parks moved from job to job, developing a freelance portrait and fashion photographer's sideline. He began to chronicle the city's South Side black ghetto, and in 1941, an exposition of his photographs won Parks a photography fellowship with the Farm Security Administration. His first photo was best known as American Gothic, Washington, D.C., and it caught the eye of his trainer, Roy Stryker. Parks created one of his best-known photographs, named after the iconic Grant Wood painting, American Gothic. The photograph shows a black woman, who's Ella Watson, who worked on the cleaning crew of the FSA building, standing stiffly in front of an American flag hanging on the wall, a broom in one hand and a mop in the background. Parks had been inspired to create the image after encountering racism repeatedly in restaurants and shops in the segregated capital city. A later photograph in the FSA series by Parks showed Ella Washington and her family. Upon viewing the photographs, Stryker said that it was an indictment of America and that it could get all of his photographers fired. He urged Parks to keep working with Watson, however, which led to a series of photographs of her daily life. Parks said later that his first image was overdone and not subtle. Other commentators have argued that it drew strength from his polemical nature and his duality of victim and survivor, and so has affected far more people than his subsequent pictures of Mrs. Watson. After the FSA disbanded, Parks remained in Washington, D.C. as a correspondent with the Office of War Information. Finally, disgusted with the prejudice he encountered, he resigned in 1944, moving to Harlem. Parks became a freelance fashion photographer for Vogue. He later followed Stryker to the Standard Oil Photography Project in New Jersey, which assigned photographers to take pictures of small towns and industrial centers. The most striking work by Parks during that period included Dinner Time at Mr. Hercules Brown's home in Somerville, Maine, The Grease Plant Worker, that was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Car Loaded with Furniture on Highway, and Ferry Commuters on Staten Island, New York. Parks renewed his search for photographer jobs in the fashion world. Despite racist attitudes of the day, the Vogue editor Alexander Lieberman hired him to shoot a collection of evening gowns. Parks photographed fashion for Vogue for the next few years, and he developed a distinctive style of photographing his models in motion rather than in poise. During this time, he published his first two books, Flash Photography and Camera Portraits, Techniques and Principles of Documentary Portraiture. A 1948 photographic essay on a young Harlem gang leader won Parks a staff job as a photographer and writer with Life magazine. For 20 years, Parks produced photographs on subjects including fashion, sports, Broadway, poverty and racial segregation, as well as portraits of Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, Muhammad Ali, and Barbra Streisand. He became one of the most provocative and celebrated photojournalists in the United States. An exhibition of photographs from a 1950 project Parks completed for Life magazine is scheduled for 2015 at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. He returned to his hometown in Fort Scott, Kansas. My time has expired, but I would like to just end by saying that Mr. Parks lived a long, full life, and he died at the age of 93. His son was also, I got to tell you this, his son produced one of the films called Superfly, 3 the Hard Way, and Aaron Loves Angela. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed telling it to you.
We have a special group to recognize. Secretary will read a resolution. No. All right, good. We have a special group we'd like to recognize. My honor now to call upon the distinguished senator from the 56th to present our very special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators and all in attendance today, we are blessed to have a wonderful relationship with the Turkish American Foundation, as well as so many different businesses and personal friendships with the Turkish community. We work hand in hand together in order to increase commerce and to better our communities. And today I'm happy to have some of my friends up here. Many of you know my good friend Cemal Bey Tibet. And we've got some others here as well, but I'm going to let Elvin Sayan, Actus, introduce the rest of our folks up here. So please give them your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, and honorable senators. I'm very excited to be here because I'm representing and helping the delegation from Turkey, which is my native country, but also I'm visiting the state capital where I work for. I'm a finance professor down in Valdosta State University, and I'm very excited to play the host and the guest at the same time. Thank you for having us. Today we have the ex-culture and tourism minister from Turkey, Mr. Ertuğrul Günay. He is currently a representative in the parliament and accompanied by his wife. Also we have another representative from the Turkish parliament, Mr. İlhan İşbilen, and Mr. Günay would like to address the Senate for a minute.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to talk Turkish. Biraz önce Temsilciler Meclisi'ni de ziyaret ettik arkadaşlarımla birlikte. Onları selamlama fırsatı bulduk. Birçok arkadaşımızın Türkiye'ye geldiğini gördüm orada. Çok mutlu oldum Cemil Bey'in ve İlhan Bey'in gayretleriyle. Umuyorum ki aranızda da Türkiye'ye gelmiş olanlar vardır.
We just visited the House chamber, and I just realized that many of the representatives from Georgia visited Turkey with the help of the Istanbul Cultural Center, Ms. Cemil Bey and Ms. Cemil Teber and İlhan İşbilen. I hope that you will also have the opportunity to come visit Turkey.
Amerika ile Türkiye'nin 100 yıla yaklaşan yakın ilişkileri var. Şimdi umuyorum ki bundan sonraki dönemde ilişkilerimiz sadece askeri ve ekonomik alanda kalmaz. Siyasi, sosyal ve kültürel alanlarda da çok daha yakın işbirlikleri yapabiliriz.
United States of America and Turkey has a long friendship exceeding centuries long, but I hope in the future that our friendship is not going to remain only in the military or economic partnership, but it will also exceed to social, political and cultural exchanges.
Çünkü dünyanın barışa çok ihtiyacı var ve bu nedenle de ülkeler arasındaki işbirliğine eskisinden çok daha fazla ihtiyacı var.
The world needs peace a lot more than it used to nowadays. We need peace and we need understanding and cooperation, and that's why we hope that this kind of cooperation will lead to a better peaceful world.
Bir kez daha hepinizi Türk-Amerikan Federasyonu'nun değerli yöneticileri, arkadaşlarım, değerli milletvekili arkadaşım, eşim ve heyetimizdeki arkadaşlarımızla birlikte saygıyla selamlıyorum.
One more time, I would like to greet you and thank you for all the hospitality on behalf of the representatives from the Parliament, our friends, the Turkish Americans visiting the Senate, and the Turkic American Federation of the Southeast. And we would like to again extend our invitation to all of you to come and visit Turkey.
Thank you very much, kind attention.
Thank you so very much. So good to see you. Very good job. Yes, thank you. All right, let's pose for a picture. You're fine. Let's get a picture down here. Chair recognizes Senator from 35th.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have some other members from Turkey who are here, so I just want them to please stand and let's give them a great American Georgian welcome. Thank you for being here as well. Some of us have been to Turkey many times, and we enjoy being there and knowing that you are open for business, and so is Georgia. So thank you for coming. Thank you. Also, I would like to speak today just for a brief moment. For many years, I taught with Atlanta Public Schools, 11 years, and my principal is actually here with his 2 grandchildren. His name is Mr. Willie Fussell, and he's standing in this corner. And also, he was over that community school program years later, and that is something that really worked well for the city of Atlanta. So let's welcome Mr. Willie Fussell, who worked for over 40-something years with Atlanta Public Schools. Thank you very much, Mr. Fussell. Thank you. I yield the well.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Senator. We have a consent calendar of privilege resolutions that are before you. Is there objection to adoption of the privilege resolutions? Without objection, the privilege resolutions are therefore adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw or commit? We have no local calendar today or any bills on the calendar either. Chair recognizes the distinguished Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand adjourn until 11 o'clock a.m. on Thursday, February 26th.
11 o'clock. I'd like to also welcome former Senator Jason Carter is with us today. Let's give him a warm welcome. Thank you for being with us. Thank you very much. The Secretary will read the announcements.
The Rules Committee will be held upon adjournment in room 450 of the Capitol. The Insurance and Labor Committee meeting will be held immediately upon the adjournment of the Rules Committee. The Public Safety Committee meeting, Insurance and Labor is in room 125 of the Capitol. The Public Safety Committee meeting will be held immediately following the adjournment of the Rules Committee in room 310 of CLOB. Mr. President, this completes the order.
Any other announcements? Chair recognizes Senator 36 for announcement.
Thank you, colleagues. We wish you safe travels as you journey home. I wanted to announce that the Senate Atlanta delegation has canceled our luncheon gathering today. We will convene next week to hear from our school superintendent and Grady Hospital Authority. Thank you, and stay warm and safe.
The Majority Leader has moved the Senate stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. We stand adjourned.